because I really wanted to be a part. Cool. I wanted to just know, be in that community. It was important to me at the time to simply be among people who, were intellectually sound, could speak properly, and all of that sweet stuff. But over time, I began to realize that it wasn't just about that. If you wanted to be a memorable Toastmaster, if you wanted to leave a strong impression, you needed to get in the game. So start speaking, start talking to people. Okay, hi Ada, nice to see you. Start speaking, start talking to people. I realized that there were opportunities in the room, and you had maybe one or two opportunities to make a strong impression. So you needed to come off as, having material, and that's where the pressure began. Oh, I have to speak. Oh, did you listen to that speech? I remember that at the time, it was, I would say back then, it was my boyfriend and I who would go to a Toastmasters meeting. So after that, we'll probably go and grab brunch. And then when we're eating that speech, oh my God, that speech, all that pressure. But 10 years down the line, I can tell you that there is no magic. It requires rather. Madam President, because I can see you. Am I still audible?
Yes, you are now.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, cool. Cool. All right. So as I was saying, I realized that it requires consistency. These things require consistency. They require showing up every day. So I'm going to take you through what I've learned in summary in the past maybe 10 years and from Toastmasters. And then as I have elevated my career and have delved into other things, some of the things that have also been useful to me. So now you've become a Toastmaster, you're a new Toastmaster, you or you're in a new role at work, or you've taken to some career that requires you to speak. How do you proceed? A lot of times I've heard this quote at Toastmasters about glossophobia being one of the top, I think the top 12, if not the 12th phobia, most popular phobia. And it is true. A lot of people are afraid to speak in front of an audience. And it is Dale Carnegie, I think, who says that a speaker who is not prepared needs to be afraid. Either Dale Carnegie or Ralph Smedley. You can check it out and let me know which one, who is who that I'm quoting. But if you're not prepared to speak, then you should be afraid. You should be worried. So how do you proceed? There is a method to the madness. How do you move forward? We use a lot of quotes at Toastmasters, and so I'm going to start off with one that I thought was impactful. Before I read the quote, I want you to know that people who are influential know and understand the importance of opening your mouth and words coming out. People who have risen, to the ladder, you understand the importance. That's why you have people who are memorable. People like Nelson Mandela of blessed memory, people like Barack Obama, even our own Yemi Osinbajo, people like Ibukwan Shika. When they open their mouths to speak, people remember them, after the fact. Why? They understand the importance. Gerald Ford is a 38 or was a 38th president of the United States of America. And he said, if I went back to college again, I'd concentrate on two things: learning to write and to speak before an audience. Nothing in life is more important than the ability to communicate effectively. You can have all the technical skills you want. You can be a great architect. You can be a great teacher. You can be the best doctor there is. But if you're unable to tell people what you do, sell your position to them, then of what use is it? It is one of the most important skills. And I'll tell you this story. Recently, I was trying to hire an assistant, someone to help me with my growing volume of work. I didn't realize how hard it would be. The fact that I need someone. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Madam President seems to have dropped off. Or maybe your video is off. Maybe
Can
I
hear
need
you.
someone who can write and who can speak. I really didn't think that it would be so hard to find someone who would do that, who could do these things. But they are rare skills. The ability to write without spelling errors and the ability to speak and communicate your position so that people follow you and do what you want them to do are rare skills. And I encourage you to continue in this path because you're in the right. It means that the fact that you're seeking out this bit of knowledge means that you're hanging with the right people. If the past president of America can say that these are skills that are most critical, then I think you're in the right place. There's a process, as I said before. There's a method to the madness. At this point, I want to say that please, if there are any questions, I would rather take them at the end of my delivery. So, but please leave them in the chat box as they come to you, and we would address them as we go along. The topic for today is drafting an impactful speech. And so that's what I'm going to address. Drafting a speech is on one hand, and on the other side, drafting an impactful speech. All right, so there's the process, and I'm going to walk you through my own process. Finding material for a speech, I think, is the first biggest headache a Toastmaster or someone who is speaking has. They've called you and they've said, oh, you're going to be a keynote speaker somewhere, and they give you a topic. You're going to be speaking on breaking the barriers of communication, for example. Such a fancy topic, but you have to find material. You must look for what to say for those 10 or 15 minutes. Or you come to Toastmasters, then your first speech is the icebreaker speech, which is a traditional first speech. The purpose of the speech is to introduce yourself to your club. But you need material. Yes, you are yourself, you are 38, 39, 45, 50. But you can't just walk up there and say, my name is Unekwu, I'm 50 years old. You need material. You need what to talk about for those 4 to 6 minutes that you're allowed. You're in front of an audience. You do not want to embarrass yourself. So you need material. But I want to tell you that you may be looking too hard. You may be digging as deep as this ant is digging, the ant in my visual. You are just digging and digging and digging and asking, oh, what do I talk about today? I know that I went through that process. In fact, recently I came across a notepad I was using when I first joined Toastmasters, all sorts of speech drafts. Today, I want to write about how my mother raised me. Tomorrow, I'll write about something. The other day, But your speech cannot be about something that is not your reality. If you speak about something that is not your reality, you come across as fake and inauthentic. There is the place of research, but some of the best and most memorable speakers are people who talk about things that are in their reality. And we'll get to talk about some of those speakers. What are some of the things in your reality? Your work, your friends, your family, fitness, politics. We don't really delve into religion at Toastmasters, but some people have found clever ways around it. We don't really delve into topics of religion and politics, but there are people who have found very clever ways to talk about them without talking about them. There are TV shows. People watch TV shows all the time. There's social media. There are all sorts of things around you that you can actually talk about. Now you've got at Toastmasters, you have a captive audience. And so people can listen to you or have to listen to you for the 5 or 7 minutes that you're speaking. But out there, you may not always get people to pay attention to you. So if you're at Toastmasters, I'll say congrats. You get a chance to talk about anything you want without the pressure of being judged. People will listen to you anyway. They must. That's the structure of the structure of our meetings. But when you are not at Toastmasters, it's important that you talk about things that interest you so you can capture the audience straight away. I want to, however, sound a note of warning that you cannot draw from an empty well when you're finding material. So if you are very shallow, I recommend that you go and search out information, read a book or two, read a blog post, listen to a vlog, listen to ebooks, listen to podcasts, listen to things. Finding material is about, writing a speech is about the material that is due, everything that you have experienced so far, plus the knowledge that you have garnered. So today you talk about something very basic. All right, tomorrow when you come to deliver another speech, you now talk about something basic. You will be defined. You will be, put in a box somewhere. So you want to, for your own development, you want to find material, you want to dig deep, you want to enrich yourself to be able to speak to people so that you remain memorable. In marketing, which is my profession, we talk about understanding your target audience. You don't do things just because you want to do them. Even when you're speaking, you're not speaking to yourself. There is an audience that is listening to you. And so it's important that when you're writing, because that's what it's about, drafting an impactful speech. When you're writing your speech, you have to think about who is listening to you. Again, at Toastmasters, we're very fortunate that everyone has to listen to you. But when you're not at Toastmasters, you need to understand, I'm speaking to very senior executives. They don't have the time to go over my 100 slides or my long-winded speech. And so for that reason, I need to say what I should have said in 1 hour. I need to know how to say it in 5 minutes. You need to understand who you're talking to. If you're talking to children, you cannot use convoluted words. You should use broken down, simple expressions that help them get your message. When you're a Toastmasters, we tend to throw in new words to improve our vocabulary. So you get a chance to play around with things, but also you have a varied audience. There are older people, there are younger people, there are different people. So who you're talking to is very important. What is your objective? Are you trying to inform them? Are you trying to persuade them? Are you trying to inspire them to take a specific action? Or are you trying to educate them, something you know that they don't know? And so the quote here says that designing a presentation without an audience in mind is like writing a love letter and addressing it to whom it may concern. To whom it may concern means any random person. All right. So please always have an audience in mind. Have an audience in mind. Have an audience in mind. Yes, that is very good. Thank God. You've been using copacetic all week. I see that. That was the word of the day at Ikeja Toastmasters last week. Please keep your audience in mind when you're drafting a speech. So, for example, if you're going to a club that is not an English-speaking club, or it's not a Yoruba-speaking club, for example, and you go there, your speech has some inserts of Yoruba, what do you need to do? That audience is not purely Yoruba, so everyone may not understand you. You need to interpret. So when you say Kilele, you will say that means what is this? So it's important to understand your audience and their nuances. Now, you have thought about the topic you want to talk about in the process of finding material. You have sourced material around that topic. You've thought about your audience. They are young, upwardly mobile, fancy people, and all that. So it's time to start writing the speech. I think one of the most important things I learned at Toastmasters is the structure of a speech. Because we, in the legacy program, before we moved into pathways, there are projects that allowed you just learn that particular thing, the structure of a speech. A speech has three main parts. If it's a 20-minute long speech, or an hour's long speech, or a 2-minute elevator pitch. Yeah, three parts of a speech: the opening or introduction, the body or the flesh, how do I say, yes, flesh, and the closing or the climax of your speech. Three main parts. I'm quoting here the 2018 world champion for Toastmasters, who said that she starts with the skeleton when she starts to write her speech, and then she starts to throw meat on the bones. And so I asked myself, what is the skeleton? The skeleton is really what I just described. What is the introduction? The first 3 sentences. So you want the rest of your speech to be hinged on those first 3 sentences. Good speakers have found a way to carry the thread of those first 2 or 3 sentences across their speech. And when they're closing their speech, you see them tying it back, So there's a way to that, those first 2 or 3 sentences, depending on how long your sentences are, really carry the weight of your entire speech. Everything else you say just goes to support. So in writing your speech, I would say after you have come up with the topic, your first 1, 2, 3 sentences really should carry the weight of your speech. Start with the skeleton and then begin to throw the meat. The meat on the bones of your speech. How do you get meat for your bones? Finding material. When you come to the end of yourself and everything you know and want to say, you need to go looking for some more information. Find material that supports you. Read a book, listen to something. All the facts on Google are not always correct, so you have to be careful who you're quoting. But most times, there's some authentic material you can find in books, in journals, and recommended or credible authors. I strongly suggest that you find some material, because as I said, you cannot draw from an empty well. You need content, or else you sound like an empty barrel. So start with the skeleton and then throw on the bones. Especially if you're new at writing your speeches, if you're struggling, start with the skeleton. Write out the introduction, the topic. Your first 3 sentences introduce what you want to talk about, and they keep you centered. So by the time you're writing the body of your speech, you find that you are now going somewhere else. Instead of, you're not staying within the speech, you're going somewhere else. You pull yourself back and say, I'm no longer on track. Cancel. I'm no longer on track. So I need to go back. So you hinge the rest of your speech on those sentences. And I'll give you an example. I will at the end of this, walk us through a standout speech that I recently heard. A standout speech that I recently heard. I'm going to walk us through that. Now, we talk about an impactful speech. I don't know, maybe because now I'm growing in my career, I'm growing in various aspects of my life, and I realize that there is something that consistency does for you. Consistency is the most difficult thing, yet the most important thing. Keeping the main thing, staying ahead or staying consistent, just keeping at it, continuing to do what you do just continuing to do it, even when you don't want to do it, when you feel like giving up, when you want to stop, just continuing. I think that is the way to get better, and that's the path to an impactful speech. The worst speech you will ever give will be far better than the one you never gave. Because you pushed yourself, you were consistent, you did great today, you didn't do great tomorrow, but you showed up anyway. You continue to put yourself out there. That is far better than sitting at home, listening to people deliver their speeches on YouTube or Zoom or wherever you people meet, or a random person judging them, commenting about their speeches and never speaking, or just simply being afraid to speak, just speaking only to yourself in your mind and to the four walls of your room, but never stepping out of your fear or your comfort zone to speak. The worst speech you will ever give will be far better than the one you never gave. So every opportunity to show up, please take it. And by that, you continue to be consistent. As you keep at it, there's no other magic. When you keep at it, you will find out that you get better. A short story here. In 2020, actually in 2018, right after I became immediate past president at Eagle Toastmasters Club, I started a master's program with Pan Atlantic University. And because the schedule was such that I spent my entire Saturday in Epe, I found out that for those 2 years, I wasn't able to attend my club meetings. And that was before COVID, so we didn't have the opportunity. Actually, my club had virtual meetings every third Saturday at that time. Every third Saturday, but I couldn't attend. Again, I was doing 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. lectures in Ekpe. The drive there and the drive after were enough to make me not pay attention to Toastmasters. And then, of course, Sundays would require me catching up with assignments, catching up with family. I had a 2-year-old at the time. It was really tough. And so in 2020, graduating, I got a letter from the dean of school, the dean of the faculty, pardon me, that I should be giving the what's that speech? The graduation speech. What's it called now? The valedictorian speech. I was very afraid. I was very, very afraid because I hadn't delivered a speech in years. This was 2 years. I hadn't spoken publicly in that way. In class, you would do presentations. Everybody is you are each other's audience. And so there wasn't really judgment. It was more about the technical content of what we're delivering. But at this graduation, they were going to be undergrads. They were going to be PhD graduates. They were going to be master's graduates. Honestly, I completely freaked out and I did a horrible job. Long and short story. I wrote my speech 500 times. My classmates who were reading for me said that, oh, Ash, why don't you speak about this? Speak about that. Speak about that. So I wanted to please people. I was trying to model the ideas up, and I did not stay true to myself. And it's one thing I deeply regret. I think the reason I fell flat on my face in that way was because I didn't keep at it. I was really afraid. I hadn't spoken in 2 years, and I felt, and I had unplugged from Toastmasters. I'd unplugged from speaking, and so to just return and start speaking completely freaked me out. I know that I could have tried, but I was very much in my head about it, and I didn't do well. And so I can tell you that returning after that experience and picking up from where I left off, choosing to start my pathways from the beginning, it was one of the better decisions I made. So that consistency is important. Today, I don't think that story is the same. I don't think, obviously, I've left a horrible impression in some people's minds, but it's okay. That's life. I'm moving forward. And it was such a strong lesson for me, a lesson in consistency. that I should continue to put myself out there and continue to speak, because you really never know when the opportunity would come, especially if you're someone who is trying to rise in your career, trying to rise in, doing things. You want to create the best impression of yourself, I think. So give that speech, show up consistently, write those speeches, show up consistently. This past weekend, I was at Ikeja Toastmasters Club, and I had a speech that made me really smile. It was a speech it was someone's icebreaker speech. And I thought it was very cute, because when he started speaking, it was supposed to be about himself. At the end of the speech, I realized, oh my God, this is so true. He doesn't really have something to say about himself because he is still finding himself. But he carried us on this journey of not knowing for 4 to 6 minutes. We ended up knowing some of his struggles, where he went to school, his decision to go to uni, and all of those things. But where am I now? I am still trying. So I thought that was it was, for me, something that stayed with me. It was something that really, really stayed with me, that we are on this journey, but it is the consistency, that showing up consistently, that makes us. It is not the one-offs. It is not the one-offs. And so when someone talks about impact, right, I wonder, impact is not a one-day job. There are people who they refer to as overnight successes. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. People who, they just say, oh, I just heard about this person. There's no such thing. They've been slaving away, putting in the work, doing things behind the scene. And then 10 years later, 12 years later, you start to hear their names and you say, where did this person come from? They were somewhere failing and rising and failing, putting in the work. It's the same thing with speeches. The only way to be impactful is by consistently doing it. Who are some of the better speakers you know today? I think one of my favorites, I really enjoy listening to her because of the simplicity of her speaking. The way she speaks reminds me of myself. I'm not an aggressive speaker. I think I speak gently. And so that consistency in her delivery is what has pulled me in. So I want to quickly play a 12-minute material. I can see that we have about 19 minutes till the end of this, but I'm hoping we can just listen to this for just 12 minutes. If you can pay attention, we would get to it. So if it's okay with you, Madam President, and everyone, in fact, I'm going to share the video so that we can all follow. Please just pay attention as she speaks. Her name is Mrs. Barack Obama. Hey, just a minute. Just a minute. I think when you listen to this, please, I'm hoping that you would share your thoughts in the comment. I hope you can see threads of the things that we discussed reflected here. I'm going to share my audio now.
Hey, hey. Well, hey. Wow, look at you guys. Oh. Well, hello, Obama land. How are you guys doing? Oh, wow. It is, it's wonderful to be back with all of you tonight. You know, the lights are down, but I saw some familiar faces out there. And I hope this has been a spectacular few days for you all, hugging folks that you haven't seen in years and reminiscing about that day 15 years ago. Woo, 15 years ago. Oh, I know that we all have stories from that night. Maybe you were still knocking on doors in Pennsylvania or Florida or maybe Nevada. Maybe you were watching on TV when you got a call from your grandmother who thought that this day would never come. Or maybe you found a moment to yourself just to reflect outside of all the fuss. For me, one of my favorite stories from that night, I hope that Barack hasn't told it already because it's one of our favorites with our family. We were at the Hyatt, and the networks had already called the election for Barack, and in a blur, our lives changed. Security detail came in. There was a football. There was, you could feel that this was something different. So we got into the limos and left the Hyatt to go to Grant Park, and it was our first motorcade with Barack as president-elect. And so he had a presidential motorcade, which we had never really experienced. And as you all may remember, the president, when you're driving around, the Secret Service closes off all the intersections. There's never any traffic on the street when the president is traveling. And here we are, a family in the motorcade, we're going down Lakeshore Drive, a drive we had taken every day, a crowded drive. And so we're there, no one's on the street, not a car, nothing. So Malia and the girl peering out the window, and she turned around to us and she said, "Daddy, there's no one on the road. I don't think anybody's coming to your party." We found ourselves in these parenting moments throughout the campaign where you realize they're just there. You forget, oh yeah, right, we have to explain this all to you. Because if you remember, primary season was long, so there was always a celebration after Ohio and then New Hampshire, and then the girls were there. We'd walk on stage and we'd leave and we're walking and Malia would say, is Dad president yet? I'd be like, oh, no, not yet. She's like, well, when will we know? And I said, well, you'll know, because it'll be a different celebration. So I was like, it's here. But I love that story because it takes me right back to who we all were back then. Back when my babies were babies. And many of you were practically babies yourselves. But I also think that story gives voice to a lot of the anxieties so many of us were feeling throughout that process. The little voices that wondered if it could really happen. Would anyone come to our party? Were folks truly ready to embrace our vision for this country? Were they ready to set aside their fears and their doubts? Were they ready to push past their cynicism and complacency? Were they willing to open their hearts and embrace a broader set of possibilities for what it means to be an American? Would they come? Because about that campaign or that election.
Hi guys, I don't know if you can still hear the video. It seems to have stopped for some reason. Can you hear it?
That stopped on this end too.
Okay, because I'm using two devices. Okay, just to save a bit of time, I have sent the video, the full version. I don't know if can you give me an emoji if you want to keep seeing the video? I don't want to be insensitive to the audience. But I'm sharing it again. We're almost there, or at least we're halfway through. Do you want to go? Should we go on? Cannot hear anybody. Okay, looking out for reaction.
I think, my opinion, it'll be more valuable for the club to get more tips from you and get Q&A going, because we can always watch this in our own time.
And yes,
Yes.
so thank you, very helpful. Thank you. Also,
welcome.
I've shared the video in full, right? So please take your time and watch the video. So let me stop sharing for the sake of time. And so I think what I wanted us to take out of this was the fact that, number one, first of all, I enjoy listening to speeches. And so when I listened to this speech, I thought, wow, this is so true to this woman. The first part of her speech just talked about she talked about our guests not coming to the party, and everything else about the speech was hinged on that, and how people came to the party and all of the challenges that they faced. And I thought that was very impactful to me. And so in closing, I want to say that she was very true to herself. Her husband is humorous. He tries to crack a lot of jokes and all that. She's a bit more intense. You have to know who you are. You have to be true to yourself in delivering your speeches. You cannot, I will never be an aggressive speaker who does a lot of gesticulating and jumping. That would never be me. I will always be one who delivers my speeches calmly. But I always sit and admire people who deliver their speeches in a very animated manner. It's very, very, very intriguing. And so I think that in delivering an impactful or writing or drafting an impactful speech and then eventually delivering it, authenticity is quite important. Please be authentic and tell your own stories. Tell things from your lens. Say the way that you see and perceive, and people will easily connect with you much easier. And then make sure you follow a structure. Draft your introduction or your opening sentences. They could be 3, they could be 2, they could be 4, but just know it can't be that long. And then the rest of your story is hinged onto them. The end of your speech is equally as important. When you do get a chance to listen to this speech, you will find that the end tied in the beginning. They are celebrating 15 years since Obama became president. And so the end ties into the beginning. So it is quite important to close with that. Close very in a way that is impactful. That is an impactful way to close your speech, by tying your ending to your beginning, so people can remember, your why, because your why was in your introduction. I think those are my closing thoughts for this. So please, if there's any question, I would be very happy to take them. Very, very happy to take them. I've read through the comments. I haven't seen a question yet. So at this juncture, I just want to say thank you all, 40 of you or 44 of you, for joining. I would be very excited to take your question now. Over to you, Madam President. If you're still here, please.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much, Toastmaster Nwaezeapu. Yes. Thank you for that impactful class. I was just taking screenshots and taking a lot of notes. Thank you very much. So over to everybody. Do we have questions? Questions? So do we have any hands raised questions that you would like to ask?
I have a question.
Okay, please go ahead.
So now when you're writing a speech, which you've all done, how many words should I be looking at if I'm doing a 7-minute speech? Because you can get all excited and go on about a speech, and then you have to chop things off. So what is the number that I should minute speech, which obviously you have to take into consideration people laughing. Online, it doesn't matter really, but I guess in person does. But what would you recommend, the number of words?
Okay. Actually, that's quite interesting. You asked that. I would say that when I'm writing a 5 to 7 minute speech, and I've written two A4 pages, I know that I'm not going to meet the time. What I've learned that works for me is writing an entire page and then no more than 2 paragraphs in the next page. So that I can deliver within a 7-minute timeline. I've done that consistently. So I'm writing in Word, the first page in full, and then the second page, just about 2 paragraphs of maybe 4 sentences each. So that will be a page and a quarter. I cannot say the number of words that is, but I hope that gives you an idea of the length.
Oh, it does. Thank you.
Okay, there's a question here, Madam President. Do I go ahead and read it?
Yes, please go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, so Gibson, pardon me, says, thank you, Unekwu, for the presentation. You mentioned something about aggressive presentations. Please, how best can an aggressive presenter handle a presentation? I don't know if I used the right word. Maybe I should have used something more positive. I don't know that aggressive is a positive word, but I hope you get my meaning. Animated, very active. And if I hope aggressive did not sway you in a wrong direction. How best can an aggressive presenter handle a presentation? I would say if the person is aggressive or animated by nature, they might as well just go ahead and be their animated self. I spoke about being authentic to you and being true to yourself and being authentic. I wouldn't change that. I cannot even speak to someone who speak about how best to be an aggressive speaker. I'm not that way. I'm not very animated and jumpy. I'm more calm. I honestly, I sometimes try to go into a speech, with action, but the moment my mouth opens, I find that I'm just calm, extremely calm. So I've stopped fighting with it. I don't. Yes, dramatic. I've stopped fighting it. I've stopped forcing myself to be anything else. I just deliver my speech in a very calm way. So if you are dramatic or intense or animated, please, as long as you stay with your message and you don't forget your speech because you're acting, I recommend that you stay true to yourself. Thank you. Okay, Ademidun says dramatic doesn't always look real as well. I would say that if that's how the person is in real life, it would look real. But if they are not that way in real life, it might look worse. Yes. So any other questions? Okay, I would ask you questions. Since there are no questions coming, it would be helpful to get some feedback. At Toastmasters, we say that feedback is the breakfast of champions. So I thank you very much, Toastmaster Agolo, for starting that feedback process out. Just let me know what things stood out to you. And if you had any contributions, please do share them. It would be nice to know. It would be nice to know what. Thank you. All right. When I write, I'm more expressive, and I really love to speak to impact. From what you're saying here, Emmanuel, what I garner is that you write better than you speak, in your opinion. So you're an expressive writer. When you write yourself, you write in a very expressive way. But when you're speaking, you find that, is it that the words don't come? You forget what you've written, or what? Because it doesn't matter that you're not very shouty. If you're a quiet person, then you should just learn to master your lines. I don't know if that helps. You want to unmute yourself, or maybe we can engage over
Okay,
this.
okay. Can you hear me, ma? Can you hear me, ma?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. I joined very late, but thank you so much, ma. The thing is, when I write, I find that I express myself more, like thoughts, gifts. Okay, so of course I might have prepared for what I wanted to say, but I still feel like it's still coming from the heart. So when I write, I find myself so expressive that I can just be imparting people. But when I want to speak, I just find that I lose out on my train of thoughts. So that's
Oh,
it.
I see your point now. So you have written the speech, and in this case, you're forgetting the speech. That's what. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think it's the same thing as what Toastmaster Agolo is saying, forgetting your lines during delivery. You can only nail this by practice. There's no miracle to it. If you don't have a teleprompter, like those people who will speak, like maybe Michelle, who we just listened to. If you don't have a teleprompter, you either need to have a paper in front of you with your entire speech or talking points, or you practice. When you practice and practice and practice, you find out that you would not forget the key points of your speech. I'll give you an example of how this worked. This past weekend, I needed to deliver one speech in two places. I knew that I didn't want to say the exact same thing, right? But I know I wanted to say, yes, I wanted to say what some very important things that I wanted to stay in people's hearts, right? And so, like Harriet is saying, oh, DTM thinker, and she's saying, I wrote the key points, what I wanted to not forget, and those are the things that I rehearsed. I did not use the exact both places, knowing that I had delivered exactly what was on my heart. So write what you want people to remember, you want them to take away from you, as opposed to the line by line and word for word. So what do you want them to take away? When you've written your entire speech, maybe take a smaller piece of paper and write just the talking points. And maybe if you go over those talking points, it might be easier for you. So you're not cramming. You just memorize your talking points and you know your flow. I want to talk about the earth. After the earth, I'm talking about fish. After the fish, the next thing I want them to remember is that fish is going to get grilled. And after the fish get grilled, we eat it and then we do the dishes. And that's the flow, right? So remember that flow. And that way, you've memorized without cramming. I hope that helps. I think I don't know how much more time you can allow us, but I will take maybe 2 more questions before we leave. Thank you, DTM Dinka. Write for the ear, not for the eye. Made no sense. So let people remember, because they're listening, they're not reading your speech. Very important. Emmanuel says, is it possible to give a good speech without writing? Also, is this style good? There are many Toastmasters in the room who are seasoned speakers. I would really like to get someone's opinion on this so that it becomes a bit more interactive, and then I'll return with my thoughts. Is there anyone in the room?
You definitely
Good.
have to write your speech. You have to write it no matter what. All the world champions write your speech because the first time you write your speech, you obviously know it's going to be version 1. And then you practice, you test it out, go to a club, they give you feedback, you come back, you make the changes. But if you're memorizing it, you'll never know where the changes are. So my opinion, if you want to be a good speaker, you definitely have to write your speech, even if it's about your life.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Very helpful. Any other thoughts in the room before I share mine?
Hello. Yeah, I think I want to
Yes,
align with what Harriet said. Usually, if you want to give a speech, you must definitely write it, because without you writing it, there is no way you will be able to give a good delivery. And like what Harriet said, leveraging on what she said, constant practice after you must have actually penciled down that speech will give you an edge at the point of delivery. So it is good for you to write before you deliver your speech. That's just my take on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gibson, and thank you, DTM Tinker. I think your question has been answered. To add, I want to share with you that you can tell the difference between someone who didn't write their speech and someone who did. The difference is always so obvious because there's no logical flow. They can lose if something comes in and distracts them, maybe the timer's cards, or someone walked into the meeting room, their train of thought just goes out the window. They didn't write it down. It is critical to write down your speech and understand the logic of your flow. That way you come across, all the time. There are a few friends of mine who we've become friendly now. When they first joined, I remember this particular person, when he first joined Toastmasters, he would just come in, he would give a speech about his wife, and then talking about how she had a baby. I remember this story very well. And then in the middle of that, he goes to talk about football. And then doesn't tie it in, but then comes back and it's always so convoluted. So it's very obvious when you don't write a speech. I think that's what I'm saying. Just people who just want to come and speak. They just want to make sure that that speaking slot is fulfilled. There's no judgment here, but if you don't write the speech, then it's not a good style. It's not good practice. Thank you. So thank you, DTM Chukudi Madu. I would not recommend freestyle speaking. You risk the chance of speaking off the point and making no impact. Yes, to the point of today's session of delivering, writing or crafting and impactful speech. Thank you for that. All right. Thank you. I think that's all the questions that we can take. With Mrs. Mukolo, I will read out your comment. You're saying here that, let me read it out. Oh, there are more comments. I'll just take this last two. Sunday Adebi says, what would you advise for someone taking an icebreaker? Do you mean delivering an icebreaker? What I would advise is write out your speech. The great thing about Toastmasters is that when you join a club newly, you are assigned a mentor. What I require from my mentees is they write their speech and they send it to me. I review the flow of the speech. The speech is theirs to write. It's their truth, it's their story. Just by the nature of the icebreaker, it's their story. So, but what I'm looking for is the flow, just to help them be organized. How does the story start? How does it go on? And how does it end? Does it include parts about them that people would really listen and be able to say, now I know a little about this guy, or I know something about this lady, because that's the objective. We should walk away knowing who you are. So that's my advice. Write the speech, give it to your mentor. When your mentor reviews it with you, start to practice your speech. And I hope that helps. Any other advice, please leave in the comment for Ayotunde Adebi. Yes, please. It is said the pen is mightier than the memory. That is a solid quote, a solid saying. Writing also helps for reference sake and for sharing with future mentees. Absolutely. In fact, Toastmaster Mukolu, what comes to mind as I'm reading your comments is today. This week, I already knew coming into this week that I was delivering this session. Last week, I started to prepare my talking points, but then the week got away from me, and we got into the weekend, and I was playing with the idea of not sharing any slides, but I thought that is not an excellent way to do things. So I finished up the slides and just kept it very simple, and just so that people could follow. Because indeed, now I can share this with some speaker notes underneath the PowerPoint, using the PowerPoint feature, and someone else can use it for a future event and a future activity, or to train their club members. I agree 100% with you that the pen is mightier than the memory. And I think there's another quote around the pencil being the dullest pencil being, I don't remember it verbatim, but the faintest pencil being more or stronger or something than the strongest memory, something around that. So thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Ikeja Toastmasters Club, and the president of Ikeja Toastmasters Club, for this opportunity to be able to speak to everyone. Thank you all for staying. I hope that you learned a thing or two today, that we can reconnect in the future. For those of you who are not Toastmasters, I invite you to join a Toastmasters Club. Please connect with Titi Ekundaya. She's going to put her number in the chat box so that you can become a Toastmaster and indeed learn some more about how to engage. Thank you so much. Thank you. Over to you, Madam President. Thank you, Toastmaster Maduka.
Thank you very much, Madam Area Director. You did a fantastic job. And well, I was just jotting away. Thank you for making our night a wonderful one and an impactful one. We appreciate you. Thank you for always being supportive of the Ikeja Toastmasters Club. And to everyone who joined, I hope that it was impactful for you. I hope that you learned one or two things. Madam Area Director is very accessible. If you still have more questions, would pass it on to her and or any other person that can, of course, shed more light to it. If you are not a Toastmaster, Ikeja Toastmasters Club is a place you need to be. I've dropped my number in the chat section. Please give me a chat or give me a call and tell you how you can be part of this prestigious club. Thank you, everybody, for making it such a wonderful night. Do have a lovely night rest. Bye-bye.